The biggest theory to come out of the Miraculous fandom since Sentitheory has been one that at first glance seems outrageous, but after a close examination turns out to be more possible than anyone could have imagined. That theory is the infamous Lila is Manon theory. Today I'm going to lay out what the theory states, provide evidence that proves it, evidence that pokes holes in it, and ultimately bring a final verdict about whether or not this theory will be canonized. So what is the Lila is Manon theory? This theory states that Manon, the sweet little girl that Marinette very often babysits, would grow up to become Lila, a pathological liar and serial manipulator who goes out of her way to distress and harm others, including her old babysitter, and eventually becomes the successor to Hawkmoth. At some point in the future, Manon would go back in time to the current events of the show, in which we see her go from untrustworthy to a literal monster, who takes great satisfaction in blatant dishonesty, a far cry from the energetic, lovable little girl we see be taken care of by Marinette. What evidence do you have to prove this claim? Let's start with Exhibit A, Manon's design. Look at the design on her purple overalls. They very clearly have Lila flowers, cerise flowers, and iris flowers on them. Lila, cerise, and iris all being known aliases used by Lila in the past, those being Lila Rossi, Cerise Bianca, and Iris Verdi. Not just that, but Thomas Asherick himself has stated that the character design should, first and foremost, be a storytelling device that tells you about the character in question. Exhibit B, blatant parallelism in how Lila and Manon manipulate. When we compare Lila and Chloe's ear to the puppeteer controlling a victim, there's a clear parallel between these two. There's also a clear connection between the two characters through manipulation. Manon is akumatized to be the puppeteer, the villain who controls people. And what does Lila do via manipulation? She controls people. Exhibit C. In the Time Tagger script, he claims, and I quote, "The Hawkmoth of the future is a woman, way more powerful than you. She's the woman I love." While this part did not make it to the animation, this is clearly referring to Chrysalis, as we see Chris blush at Lila when she starts lying to him. If Chris and Manon would fall in love as they grow up, this would clearly mean that Manon would grow up to be Lila. And I mean, just look at this scene. They're pulling on fluff. The Kwame of time travel? This is just blatant. Exhibit D. Manon and Lila clearly share appearances. They have matching hair color, matching eye color, and matching skin tones. Not to mention the resemblance between Lila and Nadia Shamak. Exhibit E. Another clear example of parallelism. Lila's babysitting for Nino and Alia, and she's taking care of Chris, Etta, and Ella. But there's someone missing from that friend group. Oh wait, Manon is present because she's Lila. Exhibit F. Why is Nadia on Lila's conspiracy board? Just about every character has an express purpose for being there, but Nadia? Why is she there? They even sit next to each other in Sabine's club, which is very strange. Why are the rest of the characters just stand-in background characters, but of the known characters, we see Lila sitting next to Nadia? Quite peculiar. With this being said, the prosecution rests its case. What evidence do you have to negate this claim? The defense has been able to find clear holes in not one, not two, but every exhibit presented by the prosecution, along with more pieces of evidence to poke holes in the claim that Lila is Manon. Before we get started, I need to introduce two very important terms that will help shape the defense. Those terms being dualist and Watsonian. These refer to the reasoning behind decisions in a story. Dualist refers to a writer's reasoning for making a decision, while Watsonian refers to the in-universe reason something happens. For example, and spoilers for Season 9, Episode 5 of The Walking Dead, why is Rick Grimes taken away by Jadis in the helicopter? The Watsonian reason would be he blew up the bridge and ended up getting saved by Jadis. The dualist reason would be Andrew Lincoln was tired of the role and tired of living in the US while his family was in the UK. He wanted to spend more time with his kids who were growing up and asked to be written off the show. That's the difference between the two terms and aspects theorists have to think about when cultivating theories. Now let's look into the holes in the prosecution. The claims regarding Manon's design have some very obvious discrepancies. Let's start with this. There's no such thing as a Lila flower. There exists lilacs, but no Lila flowers. Matter of fact, Lila roughly translates to purple, so anybody seen wearing or holding a purple flower is now under suspicion of being Lila? That's a ridiculous claim. Secondly, with regard to the cerise flowers, there's another problem. I bet you didn't notice that I changed the flower on the visual. This flower is not a cerise flower, just like how this one isn't an iris flower. Lila and cerise are colors for flowers that, by the way, do not match. That is not Lila purple and that is not cerise pink red. The fact is that the flowers present on Manon's overalls are clearly just generic flowers. They don't follow an exact model, they are just flowers for little girls' clothing. This is further backed up by examining the reasoning for the choice of names and choice of clothing. Think about the dualist explanation. While it's true Asherick has said what he said about design, think about every character whose design doesn't really illustrate anything about them. Think Adrian or Alia, very generic designs that don't speak to their characters, despite them being important to the plot. Manon's is the same way. The writers wrote a little girl, and what's common for girls to wear? Clothing that depicts flowers. As for Lila's names, they clearly just picked a theme and went with it. Exhibit B. While it's true that this parallelism could be true, what's more likely? That this parallelism hints at Lila being Manon, or it's a very common motif the show uses to show someone talking to/through someone else? Occam's razor is Exhibit B's worst enemy. Exhibit C has many problems. For starters, that line in the script, as you mentioned, was cut. We're going to use cut lines to support a theory now because that brings a plethora of problems. The main one being, how can we use cut lines from the show if we don't know every single cut line? We have to use what makes it to the finished product. So I'm asking the jury to scratch that line from their influences in the verdict. Secondly, if we're going to talk about Time Tagger's love interest, then there's 3 problems. The first being that the aforementioned line was cut. The second being that you have to prove that Hawkmoth in the future is Lila. We have no idea who the Butterfly Miraculous holder 10 years into the future is. Third being that the prosecution has made a conflation error. Chris blushes at Lila, true, but using this as a proof to further speculate that Manon is Lila is a clear conflation, as you have to first legitimize that Lila is Manon before we can take the next claim of Chris and Manon growing up and falling in love to be true and to be used as evidence against that. Thirdly, with Manon and Chris pulling on Fluff, it's clear that Manon and Chris would do something like that because Ella and Etta were already busy playing with Kalki. Think of the doyless reason for why Fluff was specifically used. It's obvious the animators wanted to have something similar to 2 kids pulling on opposite ends of a toy, but they wanted to do it with a Kwami, and Fluff has long ears which would allow for that. Exhibit D. While it's true that Lila and Manon share similar appearances, we don't know what Lila actually looks like. The fact is that making the claim that Cerise is Lila's true form is complete speculation because of how much variance she has had in her appearances. She has looked like this, and this. Who's to say this isn't her actual eye color, or this is her actual hair color? Again, think about the doyless reason for Lila's constant change in appearance, and why we the audience don't know her actual appearance. Lila is a self-described chameleon. It's clear that the mystery behind who she could be is the driving force of season 6. If Lila had a set design, then it'd be easy to eliminate people. Keeping her design ambiguous is the easiest way for the writers to hide her in plain sight and write themselves out of any corners. And the comparisons between Lila and Nadia are purely speculative too, because it's not uncommon for characters to look similar. With this logic, I could say Nino looks like Otis, so they're related. Same reasoning, just as faulty. Exhibit E, purely speculative. Think about the Watsonian reason for why Manon might not be present. While it's true that Manon is often seen playing with Ella, Etta, and Chris, Manon's only known relative isn't acquainted with the others as relatives. Nino and Alia are dating, so Ella, Etta, and Chris would have way more opportunities to play together than they would with Manon, because unless Nadia or Marinette coordinates with Nino and Alia, they probably won't play unless they go to the same school. Exhibit F. It's clear that Lila had lots of plans for how she was going to take down Gabriel and eventually harm Marinette's reputation. Considering Nadia is a news reporter and, like many others, believes Lila's lies, Lila could easily have a report on something fake that could harm Marinette, Adrian, and Gabriel. You never see this come to fruition though. As for why they sit next to each other in Sabine's club, honestly,
you got me.
the only thing that this screams to me is that the writers are seriously considering this. The Watsonian reason is that they're in the same club, but the doyless reason is that the writers do want to hint at this possibility, especially considering this line to Sabine.
You're like a mother to me.
Exhibit G. Oh yeah, we got one last thing to say. It's not a piece of evidence, but instead a rhetorical question. What are the implications of making this canon? If Manon is Lila, then why would she not speculate Marinette is Ladybug considering the Kwamis in Marinette's room? Or how about the fact that she really likes Marinette? What possible string of events could lead to such a turnaround for Manon's perception of Marinette? Or lastly, and the most important implication, that Manon is seriously sadistic. This little girl grows up to be a monster that is Lila, a person who takes pleasure in manipulation, deceives 3 women into taking care of her, all of them thinking themselves as a mother to her. The fact that this would mean Manon is literally trying to cuck her babysitter, considering Manon is well aware of the relationship between Adrian and Marinette, the implications of this theory are seriously disgusting, and I want this consideration to remain in the jury's mind while they decide on the verdict. What is the jury's final verdict? After careful consideration of both sides, the jury wants to make it known that this theory is crazy. Lila is Manon is held together by Elmer's glue, masking tape, and construction paper. The prosecution only really had one infallible point, while the defense managed to bring reasonable suspicion to every single point made by the prosecution, along with the very important factor of the implications made by this theory. With that being said, I say that the Lila is Manon theory is likely. What? Yep. And the reason why I came to this conclusion is because I want you to think about the writers of Miraculous. I like parts of season 6, but the fact is they're writing more and more episodes of Miraculous and Miraculous media because it makes them money, not because they care about the story. Think about the past, where a theory with lots of flaws that had to be retconned via tweets, holes that keep appearing in it even after it was made canon, and people having to convince themselves of it being canon because the fact is that everything shown in the show up to that point only pointed in the opposite direction was made canon. Astrup will do whatever he has to bring attention to the show and to fill his pockets even more. Whether that means cheap tricks and cryptic tweets, or if it means making a theory like this canon, then he'll do it. And that's why I believe, as dumb as the theory is, Lila is Manon will likely be made canon. Like, subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed.